What is going on, NFC South Roundtable? It is your boy Colby, and we are back here with another live video here on the NFC South Roundtable. It's been a long time, guys, since we've been here, but it feels so damn good to be back talking about football. Guys, actually heard myself in the background. I don't know what that was, but fellas, today's video brought to you by BetUS. We'll talk to you a little bit later how you can get an exclusive deal from them. Today, we're going to be talking about the offseason plans for all of the teams here in the NFC South. But before we do that, fellas, I want to go around the table and just see how each of you are doing. It has been weeks since we have done a live stream here. So there's a lot for you guys to update on how you're feeling about your teams and how you're just feeling in general. The fans here, they haven't heard from you in a while. So update us on how you guys are doing. Clay, let's start with you.
Yeah, man, I'm actually looking forward to. I've been looking forward to the off season. I love all season content. I love talking about the draft, breaking down, draft players and stuff like that, which I've been doing a lot on my channel, doing a lot of prospecting and stuff like that. But also looking into the free agencies, and then this is when all the rumors and all the hot takes start coming out about your team and players that may be tied into you. So this is actually one of my favorite times of the year, even, if my team's not winning the Super Bowl or doesn't make the playoffs. The offseason content's where things get interesting.
Yeah, Clay, I'm the exact same way. And everybody talks about loving the regular season. And, for those who don't know, I am a Patriots fan. Even when we were good and we were going to the Super Bowls, I still liked the offseason more than the regular season, as wild as that probably sounds, because that's when the optimism is the most high. That's when it's like, if for anybody who plays Madden, when you do the little rebuild in the offseason, that's what it's like for our teams, but in real life. That's where the excitement is, and everybody's starting fresh. We are all back to square one. So I agree with you, Clay. I think this is really where the fun starts for 2025. But James, how you feeling?
Well, the Bucs offseason was off to a, let's just say, not a great start, so to speak. I mean,
what a weird instance for you guys. That was,
yeah. I mean, Liam. That was, dude, I thought I was the whitest guy in the nation. I mean, just look at me. Dude, I saw that and I was like, wow, I think Cohen might have beat me. I think he might have beaten me with that one line. It was incredible.
Exciting white.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, dude. I was like, man, I can't even really be mad at him anymore because he took the mantle away from me. So I'm grateful. But
he thought he did something too, James. Like, did you see him say he was like, Duval? And he looked around like he was like, dude, I just ate. And everyone just looked at him like,
do you know the amount of times I've seen that clip, dude? It's like I've had people who literally don't care about football at all come up to me and go, Duval. I'm like, please. I'm like, you know what, man? But that happened. So the Bucs have a new offensive coordinator for the 4th year in a row. So excited about that. But I'm happy to be back here with the NFC South Roundtable, man. It's been too long since we've had a live show. So I am happy to be here.
It has. And guys, for everyone wondering, well, is this just another live stream and then we're not going to see you for another month? No, we finally have the off season in place for each of our creators here for Roundtable Sports. So we have more consistency for the offseason and as we, of course, approach the 2025 season. Now, James, I do want to ask you, what was your kind of thought process when that entire Liam Cohen situation happened? Because we heard, he was going to take an interview with the Jags, and then we heard, never mind, he's going to stay with the Bucs. He's going to be their offensive coordinator. Then we hear like the next day, a couple days after, they can't contact him and he's on a plane going to accept the job as the Jags head coach. What was your thought process through this whole thing?
It's not the why that disappoints. Well, first off, whenever I heard he was coming back, I was super excited, right? And then then got hit with the Uno reverse card, and I was like, well, that's disappointing. And then like you started to hear more and more details about like how this all happened, and it was like, wow, that's like a really bad look for this guy, right? And a lot of people have been saying that the Buccaneers strong-armed Cohen and, that it was bad business by them. Look, they were going to make Cohen the highest paid coordinator in the league, right? That's not really doing bad business, in my opinion. And yeah, of course they didn't want Cohen to go take a second interview. They were worried that they pretty much probably knew he was going to take that job or get offered that job, right? So sometimes is the NFL, right? Sometimes you do have to be a bit, tough in terms of your business and whatnot. The why doesn't bother me with why Cohen left. I think any of us would take that opportunity if it was presented, right? To be making $13 to $14 million per year, be the head coach of an organization, one of only 32 positions in the league, and just secure, and also have your own pick of a general manager, by the way. Like that's That's all well and good, but it's the how that is the more disappointing aspect of that situation, right? Like saying, hey, I am going to be coming back, telling all of your players, hey, I am going to be coming back, then delaying the signing, having a secret conversation with Jacksonville, going away in secret to try and play both sides of the ball, right? That's where it's like, yeah, that's not a great look, right? And I feel like if there would have just been more openness and more communication there, the situation could have gone so much smoother. But in my opinion, I mean, Cohen's, burned that bridge there in Tampa. And, hey, we'll see if it works out for him in Jacksonville. He's a fantastic offensive mind. I've said that time and time again, and I'm not taking anything away from him. I do wish the situation, the how would have went better than it did, though.
Yeah. Your best friends be your biggest stop, James. Let me tell you. One thing I've learned in life, your best friends, they be your biggest stops. That's exactly what happened here with every single Buccaneers fan. By the way, for people wondering, damn, why does Colby look a little bit different than usual? So I was at the Senior Bowl and the Super Bowl. Where I'm from, it's like 10 degrees, right? This is freaking winter, the dead middle of winter. They don't tell you when you go to Alabama during the winter that you about to get sunburned, baby. So let me tell you, I came back from both trips, look like a damn tomato. So for those who are wondering why I look different, that's your reason. But Smitty, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good, man. Feeling wonderful, man. Can't call it. But James, one thing that I did take from what happened with Liam Cohen, if you ain't got a person under contract, ain't really nothing you can do.
Yeah, I mean it's true. I mean, it's an interesting situation, man. That's the least that can be said about it.
Facts.
Real talk. What about you, TJ? How you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling great, man. I mean, I think it's great that we're actually doing the show on a day that the Saints decide that they're going to hire a new head coach.
Let's go, TJ. Let's
go. Excited about that.
Yeah.
It took a while for them to get to this point, but I'm excited to see what the future holds for the Saints. I'm just happy that they're going in a different direction than what they have been used to going. I was a little bit concerned about the head coaching hiring process. I thought maybe they want to dig in the crates, try to bring somebody in that was close to Sean Payton or something like that. But, the Kellen Moore signing to me, it's just the start of something fresh. I don't know if it's going to work out. I don't know what Kellen Moore is going to be like as a head coach, but it's a culture change. Like he has like no ties to Sean Payton, no ties to anything that Sean Payton does. He's not even like him at all in any way. So I just think that's a plus. The next question is what are the Saints going to do with the quarterback position with Derek Carr? That's the next question. But I do want to say this, though, James. I want to speak a little bit on Liam Cohen for a second, Kobe.
Yeah.
I've never seen a coach that acts the way that he does be successful. Like, I never have. Like,
great point.
He giving me, like, Bobby Petrino vibes. And I know, Smitty, you know what I'm talking about here.
Oh, yeah, I definitely know what you're talking about.
Like,
goes sideways, he
out the door, man. He told his players, like, he was going to stay. Then the next day, they found letters in their locker. He's on his way to the University of Arkansas. I don't know, man. Like, I understand that there's only 32 of these jobs in the National Football League, and it's an honor for you to even get an interview, say the least, actually get the job. But you don't want to burn the bridges, man. They got that old saying, right? You never want to burn the bridge because you never know when you have to cross that bridge again. So that can actually, if it doesn't work out in Jacksonville, for better or for worse, this can actually affect him. As far as next head coaching opportunities that could arise. So I just hope that he made the right decision, man. I hope that they do some winning, because if not, then that is going to be, asterisk on his legacy, man, and who he is as a person. So, yeah, you want to make sure that you're doing business. I understand NFL is a tough business, but you also want to do fair and be honest, man. You don't want to be just going hiding and people were looking for you, and the next thing you know, you're in Duval. Duval. You got to do it right, man. You got to do it right.
Well, real quick,
hope he don't be like Bobby Petrino and fall off that motorcycle with his side chick.
well, real quick, I'm happy you brought up like the Bobby Petrino situation, everything like that, because I've seen a lot of Jacksonville fans be very happy, right? And again, like, I think it's because the focus is on the offensive mind of Cohen, right? But I mean, TJ, a great point. Like, who's to say if Jacksonville goes and wins 4-5 games in year one, Cohen's not going to say, all right, well, I'm out of here, and then he leaves Jacksonville after a year, like, who knows,
Hey,
like,
yeah, they got that old saying too. You lose them how you get them too. And also, I want people to understand this: like a tiger don't change his stripes. I was looking at like they did like a video on social media of him like meeting with Trevor Lawrence and all the star players on the team. And I gotta tell you, man, I don't know, man. The dude give me like fake vibes, man. Like it looked like he's like really disingenuous. And I'm not just saying that, man. Like he just like. They better start winning. That's all I got to say, because if things go wrong, I can see Jacksonville like really like in a downward spiral. I'm talking Urban Meyer type stuff here. I'm serious, man. He going to have to make sure that he keeps that energy up, man. And I question if things, go sideways with that football team, what they would actually look like in 2025.
Yeah, TJ. And as for the Kellen Moore side of things for the Saints, is this a guy that you feel optimistic about? Now, obviously, you don't ultimately know how this is going to go for New Orleans, but do you feel optimistic about the direction? Kellen Moore, to me, is a guy, he's been with several different organizations, but he's someone that I'm surprised that this is the first time he's gotten a head coaching opportunity. I thought no matter what organization he's been with, he's made that offense look very, very good. So what are your thought process on him?
Well, like I said, it's a fresh start. I don't know. I don't know about him as a head coach. Like his personality to me, it does kind of make me nervous. I just think that he's a little bit too laid back. And the Saints are, they already fired a coach that kind of had that personality, kind of laid back, passive. So I'm concerned in that regard. But I don't question his ability, to be able to coach the offense. Like he's one of the most intelligent coaches out there. Like if you look at his resume, this guy, he retired in 2017. He was a quarterback coach in 2018 and then became the offensive coordinator in 2019. Teams don't give you that type of opportunity unless they feel like you're bright enough, smart enough, and have the skills to do it. So I don't question his football acumen. I don't question his ability to be able to turn around that offense. But I do question, like, can he have that alpha dog mentality? I don't think that you have to be a rah-rah guy all the time. Like, we see guys that don't have that type of energy. Kevin O'Connell, he's kind of laid back. If you want to go back a little further, Tony Dungy, Lovie Smith, they kind of had those personalities that were kind of laid back. But you know where the buck start and stop with both of those gentlemen. So that's the only question I have for him. But he checks all the boxes. I mean, we're looking at a new wave in the NFL where you're seeing these 30-something-year-old coaches coming in full of energy that can relate to some of these younger football players. And it also is a plus for him that he actually was a former NFL player. And I was talking with someone who played in the league, a few weeks ago, and he was just saying, like, when we seen that a coach on our squad, was in a foxhole. They call it in a foxhole of being a former player. They say that there's a level of respect that they have for him. So I think that that's a plus, for him. He checks all the boxes in that regard. But, only time will tell. I just like that the Saints did something different. I mean, he wasn't their first choice. I mean, Aaron Glenn was. But, I mean, if they can fall and stumble into this situation and it turns out well, I mean, nobody's going to be thinking about that at all.
Yeah, I really thought Aaron Glenn was going to the Saints. I mean, we heard right when the season was over, there's a 90% chance that Aaron Glenn is the next head coach of the Saints. And then obviously that doesn't happen, and he ends up going to be the head coach of the New York Jets. So that was definitely a surprise. Now, guys, for those who don't know, the topic of today's video is going to be the offseason plan for each team here in the NFC South. Each of your creators are going to break down what they think their team is going to do and what they feel that their team should do. But before we break that down, I want to give a massive shout out to the sponsors of this video over at BetUS. Right now, when you guys sign up and use the code you see on the screen, YouTube150, that is YouTube150, you will lock yourselves into a limited time exclusive offer of a 150% sign up bonus on your first deposit, followed by 125 on your next two, all the way up to $2,000. Now, a lot of you might be saying, well, the football season officially is over. The Super Bowl just happened. What am I supposed to bet on? The best part about BetUS is that they have the best betting variety in the business. I'm not just talking about betting on NFL games, but I'm talking about NFL futures. Right now, with free agency right around the bend, BetUS has the odds where some of the top free agents are going to land. You can bet where T. Higgins is going to land. If you think it's going to be your team, put your money where your mouth is and go ahead and bet on it with BetUS. They also have live wagering on all major games. You can bet on basketball, baseball, hockey, horse racing, fighting, politics, entertainment. But the deal doesn't stop there because they're also giving you 10% back on your net losses 2 times a year. But play smart, play responsible, never bet more than you can afford to lose. But a massive shout out to BetUS. But fellas, I want to get back in here to today's live stream. And Clay, I want to start with you. Your Carolina Panthers, they started the season the same way that I feel like we've seen the Carolina Panthers over the last few years. You went into the season thinking that, okay, maybe there was potential that we can start taking a step forward. They didn't show you that, at least not in the beginning of the season. But that second half of the season, towards the end, you started to go head to head with some of the best teams in the league, one of which was the Kansas City Chiefs, who just represented the AFC in the Super Bowl. Bryce Young, after you sat him, really made that turnaround. What is your offseason plan for the Carolina Panthers?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I want them to continue to obviously build up on the offensive line. I think adding depth there, like that's like, I'm talking about like, this is like third on my chart. Then we got, second and, first tier. But my third tier is definitely building the offensive lineup. Yeah, we got Damian Lewis this offseason. This past offseason, you got Robert Hunt that helped out tremendously. All right. We were in top 10 in pressure rates throughout the season. And so they did their thing. There was only a couple games where they didn't finish in the top 10 with the lowest pressure rates. But the offensive line, I think you got to continue to add depth. When Austin Corbett went down, Kay Mays is now an unrestricted free agent. He stepped in nicely. Brady Christensen, I think, is an Andrew Norwell 2.0. I think is a guy that's an unrestricted, who's also a free agent that I think we need to re-sign as well. Because, you can learn a lot from that Eagles team that just won the Super Bowl.
Yes.
Okay. That Eagles team reminds me of the Alabama of the NFL. They built those trenches up from the ground up, the offensive line and defensive line, and that's what made them so good. They didn't have to put pressure. They didn't have to run blitz packages to get to the quarterback. And so that tells you all you need to know with how much depth and rotation you have on the defensive line. So, but yeah, their offensive line though did their thing. Look at the year that Saquon Barkley had, and was able to do with that offensive line, right? And that's one thing I want to be able to do is continue to have that ground game going with Chuba Hubbard. So right. So it's really not that as the defense is. I think our defense, it definitely needs a complete overhaul, but I'll get to them in a second. Next up is wide receiver. The reason why I say wide receiver is Bryce Young in the last 10 weeks outplayed CJ Stroud. If you go, because he's always getting compared to CJ Stroud. I don't care what anybody says. Go look at the last 10 weeks. He completely outplayed CJ Stroud in the last 10 weeks. Now, yes, one made the playoffs, one didn't. One has a defense, the one doesn't, right? So I think he needs a true number one receiver. I think that he can still build that continuity with Xavier Legette going forward and Jalen Coker. Jalen Coker looked nice, an undrafted free agent. But I think you need that guy that can take it to another level, right? And there's guys out there. There's been a lot of rumors about trading for Garrett Wilson, but then there's also talk about getting free agents like T. Higgins. Some other guys out there, names have been thrown around, Mari Cooper. And then, of course, Stephon Diggs is the name is also been thrown out there. There's really not a personal preference for me. I just want to get a true number one. I have also thought about getting a true number one tight end. Jadavion Sanders is a nice solidified, but he's a rookie. I think he definitely has the route running skills, but I need someone that can open up the middle of the field for Bryce Young. And so when you have a true number one tight end, you can do that. But besides that, I would probably take a number one wide receiver over that. So I'd probably take like a T. Higgins, somebody like that. We could go in the offseason. We have to be aggressive, right? You got to be aggressive this offseason if we're going to rebuild this the right way. And the window with Bryce Young on that rookie deal is getting slimmer and slimmer as time goes on, right? So your window is very short right now with him on that rookie deal. Now, going forward, the biggest thing for Carolina this offseason is building that defense up. A complete overhaul from the defensive line all the way up. The defensive, we saw this team have one of the worst statistical defenses throughout the year. Last in run defense, almost dead last in passing defense. So they have to rebuild this defensive line, and they got to do it fast. So once that free agent hits, I think you've got to start looking at some guys like Josh Sweat as a free agent. Look what he did. I think that's a guy maybe you take a look at. That we've also been tied into the Myles Garrett situation. Micah Parsons' names has been thrown out there. Milton Williams is another one name that's been thrown out there. But there's been a lot of defensive players that's been thrown out there. But again, when you average over 31 points a game allowed per game, that's pretty embarrassing. So that you've got to rebuild this defense. I understand you losing a guy like Derek Brown was a huge loss. I think also, losing Shaq Thompson, who's a leader on this defense, is a huge loss. There's no telling if he's coming back, right? But with that number 8 pick, I think Carolina also needs to look into the draft as well in the defense. Like with that number 8 pick, you can go multitude of ways. You can either draft the best defensive player available there, or you trade back and you grab more draft capital, because really you don't pick until the later end in that second round. And Carolina really needs to grab a earlier second round pick, I think, to really build this defense up and try to get some of those blue chip players. But again, I think when we look at this 2024-2025 draft class, I think this is going to be like that 2019 draft class where it was just all these big name defensive players come out of it. And I think that's what we're looking at in this draft class. So the biggest thing for me, rebuilding that defensive line, whether it's obviously through free agency in the draft, getting Bryce Young a true number 1 wide receiver, I think is important, and continue adding depth and rotational pieces on that offensive line.
Yeah. Is there anybody in the draft that early on, as a Panthers creator, that you're looking at trying to target?
Oh my God. Panther Nation really wants either Abdul Carter or Mason Graham. And I'm cool with either one. Mike Green had showed me a lot through that Senior Bowl. I watched a lot of his tape. You're talking about an explosive edge rusher off the line who's got the power. I like him as well. But here's the thing for me. I'm a big believer in what happened with the Trayvon Walker situation back in the 2023 draft class. A lot of these guys that are mid-tier guys, when they go to that combine and they show their athleticism, their draft stock's going to shoot through the roof. So for me, I'm okay. Even if we don't get Abdul Carter or we don't get a Mason Graham, I still believe that there is so much talent and depth here that you could get a blue chip defensive player if you don't get Abdul Carter or Mason Graham.
Yeah, Abdul Carter, a guy that realistically probably not even going to be there. That's someone that even Patriots fans are big on. He might not even be there by pick 4, but Mike Green, that's a guy that I think is going to continue to shoot up draft boards. He was one of my favorite guys early on in the process. Like you mentioned at the Senior Bowl, day 1 didn't look as good as I think some people thought he would. Day 2 practiced so well. He didn't have to play in the game. He didn't have to practice day 3. Absolutely bull rush Josh Connerly, a projected first-round tackle back. And that for him at that point, that was like, yeah, my draft stock's up. I'm a first-round pick. I don't got to practice no more. So
that might be worse than the Derrick Henry, Josh Norman situation.
It really might be. I mean, Josh Connerly, his stock dropped after that one. That was insane. So I like those picks. Now, James, let's go ahead. Let's go on over to you. I want to hear what your offseason plan is for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, new offensive coordinator. Do you think that's going to impact Baker Mayfield? And I touched on a video here on the NFC South Roundtable not that long ago talking about kind of the outlook for somebody like Chris Godwin. I would love to hear from you what you would love to see your Buccaneers do with Chris Godwin, whether that's kind of get younger at the position, or would you rather bring him back?
Oh, I saw that video, Colby. You're
like
trying to steal my job.
Yeah,
no,
dude. I was like, I'm James for the day. I put on my James cap, and I was like, all right, I'm a Bucs fan now.
I saw that. I said, I guess I'm getting the pink slip. I'm not going to be needed for much longer. This is just going to be the Colby Cochran show. No,
The Colby Cochran show.
But no. So firstly, to answer your first question about offensive coordinator, I think that in some ways it will affect the offense, right? Because I do think Liam Cohen, as much as he is a snake, he is a very good offensive mind, right? Now, I think one positive, though, is that Josh Grizzard was with the Bucs throughout the entirety of last season, right, as their pass game coordinator. So you are going to have continuity with this coaching staff. All of the assistants, besides, I believe, John Van Dam, who joined Cohen over in Jacksonville, are staying. That's huge, right? Because I think they have some really good assistants in terms of their offensive line coaches, some of their running back and wide receivers coaches in there as well. So that is a good thing. So I don't necessarily think it is going to be as big of a jump as it has been from Byron Leftwich to Dave Canales and then Dave Canales to Liam Cohen. So that isn't as much of a concern, in my opinion. You did mention Chris Godwin, and to kind of talk about that, I do think Chris Godwin will be back. I think that whenever you take a look at all the draft picks that Jason Light has made, Mike Evans is, probably is the best draft pick that he's made. You could argue Chris Godwin is probably 2 or 3, right up there with like Tristan Wirfs, right? Jason Light is a big believer in re-signing some of his top guys, right? Especially guys that he has drafted. Any GM would do that. So I do believe the Buccaneers are going to try their absolute darndest to bring back Chris Godwin and continue to have him and Mike Evans be that duo, because people forget, like, Chris Godwin was having a phenomenal year last year before he got hurt, right? I think with that injury, that can look to lower his price tag, maybe a smidge. I still think he is going to get a very big payday and probably like a 3-year contract, something along those lines. Again, there's just me kind of throwing some guesswork out there, but I don't think it's going to be as like contentious of a situation as it may be believed outside, the building for the Bucs. I very well see Chris Godwin coming back to the Buccaneers and kind of continuing that pairing with Evans and just continuing more of that continuity on offense. They had actually asked the new offensive coordinator, Josh Grizzard, about that. And basically he had said, like, yeah, he's really freaking good. We want him back. So to paraphrase. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason, but whenever we talk about like the plans and whatnot, dude, it's got to be the defense, right? I mean, and that's kind of a blueprint for most of these NFC South teams right now, is kind of addressing, first and foremost, pass rush, right? Kind of getting consistent pass rush on all of these teams, Bucs included, right? We just saw why the Eagles won in big part that Super Bowl against Kansas City was because they had a pass rush that could get after Mahomes like nobody's business, right? So I think that's going to be a very, very big point for the Buccaneers offseason is, hey, they've got to get a number one guy in this building in terms of being a pass rusher. Is that going to be Josh Sweat? Is that going to be Trey Hendrickson with the Bengals? I don't think they're going to go after like a Myles Garrett or a Max Crosby or whoever. I don't think any of those like super duper big names with like big contracts is going to get moved. But they need to get a number one pass rusher, right? They need to. And then after that, you kind of have some supplemental stuff on defense. Like if Levante David retires, you've got a big hole at the middle of your defense because Levante David's 35 years old. So yes, you have Servassier Dennis, and he could be your number 2 linebacker, but then you're going to need a number 1 linebacker. How are you going to address that? If you do decide to move on from Jamel Dean this offseason, sure, you've got Zion McCollum as a number 1 corner, but then you need a cornerback too. And at both those position groups, you need depth. Right. So that's kind of going to be 3 of the biggest position groups I think the Buccaneers will need to address this offseason, is finding a number 1 caliber pass rusher, finding depth and some starting caliber work at cornerback, and especially finding some starting caliber work at inside linebacker as well. Honestly, offensively, there isn't a ton you need to change. I mean, you've got 4 very quality, capable starting offensive linemen. Maybe you bring back Ben Bredesen, maybe you get some different type of left guard. If you bring back Chris Godwin, your wide receiver room is pretty much set. You look at that running back room, you got Bucky Irving, you've got Rachaad White. You feel good about that room. Quarterback, you've got Baker Mayfield, right? And then at tight end, you've still got Cade Otton under contract. So offensively, there isn't really a ton you need to change. But defensively is where I think needs to be the biggest amount of focus this offseason for the Bucs. Because if you do get a defense that can complement, what that offense was doing this previous season, and even if the offense is, not as good as it was last year, which I don't think it's going to be, I think they are going to have to, just by default, take a bit of a step back. If you're still having an offense that can score 24, 25 points a game, something along those lines, and still be in that top 10 scoring type of offense, if you get a defense that can at least be around the league average, if not, say, like top 13, top 12 type of defense, you're looking at a very good team, right? So that's going to be the biggest focus, is figuring out this defense. They didn't move on from Todd Bowles, so do what you can to support that side of the ball for your defensive-minded head coach, because offensively, you've done about all you can to bolster that side of the ball. Now it's time to shift gear and focus on that defensive side of the ball, which has been lacking the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, now, James, I think one of the biggest interesting things about the Buccaneers heading into the offseason is that cap space. Now, I don't like to make a big deal about cap space per se, because you can maneuver it so well. We've seen this from teams year after year after year. The Buccaneers are expected to have, at least currently, the 9th lowest cap space out of all NFL teams heading into the offseason. Currently, you are projected to have about $2.2 million to spend. So looking at that and understanding that, yes, Chris Godwin, given his age, given the injury history, might take a bit of a pay cut to stay with the Bucs, but he's still going to cost you a significant amount of money. Looking at all of the holes you have defensively, and that really being the Achilles heel to your team this past season, you personally, not even thinking about what the Bucs will do, but James personally, would you rather see them retain Chris Godwin but not make as many moves on the defense, or move on from Chris Godwin, get a guy in the draft, and try to really put more of those assets in free agency towards the defensive side of the football?
It's a good question. What would I do personally? I think that I would still trust in bringing back Chris Godwin and having continuity on that offense, because I still believe that it is an offensive-driven league, and make a bit less moves on the defensive side of the ball, at least in terms of free agency. You can still draft players and have some success. I mean, there's still a lot of really good tier players that you can draft in the couple early rounds of this upcoming NFL draft for positions like cornerback, inside linebacker, and especially edge rusher. It's a very deep edge rusher class. So I think I would still probably take the move of focusing on bringing back Chris Godwin, keeping that continuity. Because look, even with the defense being what it was last year, I still believe they should improve, but that offense was very big on carrying the Buccaneers last year, right? So I would not want to meddle in that, because if that offense falls apart, you could be looking at some tough stuff, right? So I would definitely focus more probably on the offensive side of the ball, bringing back Chris Godwin, keeping that continuity, and making sure that offense is still as strong as it can possibly be. Yes, you do have Jalen McMillan there. Yes, you do have Trey Palmer. For some reason, Trey Palmer's kind of fallen out of favor last season for some reason or another. Maybe he'll get used more now that Josh Grizzard is the offensive coordinator. But I would say bring back Chris Godwin. And Colby, you did mention the flexibility, the salary cap and whatnot. Look, teams are still going to, the salary cap is so flexible nowadays that teams still find ways to bring in new players and add talent, right? If the New Orleans Saints aren't necessarily worried about their salary cap situation per se, right? Like, they are going to get cap compliant, and they are going to find ways to free up some space to make some moves. Every team in the league can do that as well. And there are some moves that the Bucs can make in terms of restructuring contracts, like Wirfs, like Mayfield, like Winfield Jr., to make moves to be able to not just bring back a guy like Chris Godwin and bring back some of their own free agents, but also be able to bring in a new face or two in there as well. Now, that's kind of why I mentioned, hey, bringing in back a guy like Chris Godwin and then going out and saying, hey, we're going to bring in Myles Garrett and give him $40 million a year or whatever the star edge rushers make nowadays. That's unrealistic. But you can still bring in capable pass rushers or defensive players, whatever it may be, at affordable contracts and still build a capable defense. I mean, for goodness sakes, like, and I know this isn't exactly the best example in the world, but whenever Shaq Barrett was first brought in, I believe it was like a $6 million contract. He had 19 and a half sacks his first season, you know? So it just depends on how good your staff can be at finding those gems in the rough, finding guys who have been looking for opportunities. And the Bucs may have to be relying on that process yet again here this upcoming offseason, but ultimately we'll see. They still have moves that they can make to free up that cap space as well.
Do you have any early targets for the Buccaneers when it comes to the draft? Now, I know it's very early in the process, but anybody at least early on you're looking at?
Yeah, Jahad Campbell's an interesting name, linebacker out of Alabama.
I like that.
They actually just hired Charlie Strong. You guys know Charlie Strong. He's coached at so many different places in Florida, was the DC for the Gators whenever Urban Meyer was doing his things over there, former head coach of Texas, USF, But one thing that he did was he was a defensive analyst for Alabama in 2023 and in 2020, I believe. So not only did he have the opportunity to at least see and work with, probably in some capacity, with current Buccaneers pass rusher Chris Braswell, second-round draft pick from last year's draft, but Jahad Campbell was there as well. So there is a little bit of a connection there. There is a little bit of a thread there that can connect a current member of the Buccaneers coaching staff to a high-tier player that could be available at pick 19. I also look at James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. I really like that guy a lot. I think that he is a very solid pass rusher. I do feel like you do need to have a defensive-heavy draft, right? In the early 3 rounds, in whatever order, I think you've got to take a middle linebacker, you've got to take an edge rusher, and you've got to take a corner in those first 3 or 4 picks that you have, right? To supplement and at minimum add depth to those groups. So when I look at starting caliber guys, like, yeah, I'm looking at Jahad Campbell, I'm looking at James Pierce Jr., maybe Nick Scorton could be in there. Cornerback, they've got some interesting names in there as well. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I know there's a cornerback at who played for Ole Miss. I know there's a cornerback at Notre Dame as well. So I certainly, those would be some of the targets and some of the position groups that I would target if I was the Bucs and would want them to target.
For sure. Well, you guys let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. What would you do if you're trying to rebuild the Carolina Panthers? And what would you do if you were trying to rebuild the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Now, before we get on to Smitty, before we get on into TJ, want to let you guys know about something new that we're doing here at Roundtable Sports, not just for the NFC South Roundtable, but quite literally every single show that Roundtable Sports has. For those who don't know, we have a show for every single division in the NFL. We also have exclusive shows on Roundtable Sports' main YouTube channel. We got Draftaholics every single Thursday live at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. You got Wake Up and Ball with TD, with Richie, Monday through Fridays. And this Patreon that we're launching here goes for each and every single one of these shows. It is right now pinned in the comment section. You guys can click on it if you are interested in joining. We have multiple different tiers here, and I want to break them down for you real quick. The first one is $3 a month, and it's called the Practice Squad. By the way, you guys can also do annually rather than paying monthly, and you can save 20%. That's absurd. You pay yearly for your subscription, and you're saving 20%. Great deal. But if you want to join the Practice Squads here for $3 a month, you get a shout out on your favorite Roundtable show, access to the private Discord, Patreon shout outs, a private community, and of course, Patreon shout outs also. If you want to be a starter for $5 a month, that's our next tier. You get everything from the previous tier, plus access to Patreon exclusive film room reviews. So we're talking about college players, NFL players. If you want to get reviews on these guys' film, this is going to be the tier for you. Next up, we have a $10 a month, and it's called Pro Bowler. This is for everything that the Practice Squad members received. Your name will be featured during the end credits of every single episode on every single Roundtable Sports show. You also will have access to a standard private Q&A Discord channel, Patreon shout out, private community, and exclusive content. Then we have the All-Pro. The All-Pro, you get custom film review requests. If there's a player that you want to see from the collegiate level, from the NFL, you let us know, and that video will be made for you. You'll be entered into monthly merch giveaways. You get 10% off on all Roundtable merch from our store, linked in the description box below in every single one of our videos. You get monthly Zoom calls for 1 hour every single month with our creators. You get exclusive game picks, access to voice messages channels on Discord to submit questions for every Roundtable show. And of course, you get the Patreon shoutouts, live Q&As, private community, merch, all that good stuff. And then our last option here is called the Hall of Famer. This is the biggest one. This is $50 a month. You get everything that all the other tiers get, plus you get the ability to come on all Roundtable shows, voice your thoughts, voice your opinions. This is your opportunity. Anyone listening right now for the NFC South Roundtable, this is your opportunity at the end of our shows to come on face to face with each of these creators and voice your thoughts, voice your displeasures with anything your teams are doing, anything that these creators have said. Again, these tiers, these are the options for you right now on our Patreon. It supports all of our creators, everybody at Roundtable Sports. So consider looking at our new launch Patreon, again, linked in the comment section. But fellas, I want to get back into this. And Smitty, I want to go down to you. What are your thoughts on the Atlanta Falcons offseason plan? You were a team that I think everybody expected to make the postseason, to be in the playoffs. It looked early on like that's exactly what you were going to do. Right before the season starts, you make 2 big moves on the defensive side of the football, but it just felt like coaching is ultimately what let you guys down. How do you get back into contention for 2025?
Well, you answered part of the question with coaching. Coaching has to be on point this season. They fired Jimmy Lake, which was, far too long. Should have been fired before then. And the bad part about it, when they went on a 4-game streak, when they were playing good defense, I think Jerry Gray and Raheem Morris were calling the defense. They gave him a chance to redeem himself the last 2 games, but they couldn't. But what I feel like the Falcons have to do this year, man, I'm going to go with James just a little bit. I think the Falcons have to focus on defense. Because when you look at defense, pass rush has been horrific for the last 6-7 seasons. Now, granted, when the Saints former defensive coordinator was here for a year, he went to Jacksonville. They ended up with 42 sacks that season. So that lets you know coaching was a part of the problem. Now, there are positions on this team, on the defense, that I feel like need to be filled through the draft and free agency. Defensive end, edge rush is one. Defensive tackle, I feel like they had to add pieces to that because they're losing a lot of key pieces on the defensive line. David Onyemata has 1 year left on his deal. He may end up being a cap casualty. You have Eddie Goldman and Kentavious Street, who's a free agent. So Taquan Graham as well. So going into this draft, I feel like at number 15, you definitely have to look at edge rusher because I feel like Mike Green, Jalen Walker, no one's really talking about him, but he's one of those guys that could be a Michael Parsons type talent. And with the Falcons at 15, I feel like that should be one of their main targets because they have a hole at linebacker as well. Because outside of Caden Ellis and J.D. Bertrand and Troy Anderson, who's often injured, you don't really have nobody outside of those guys. So as I'm looking at Troy Anderson, he could be one of those pieces that I feel like could be a cap casualty as well. So you bring in a Jalen Walker that kills 2 birds with 1 stone, basically. You also have free agents at the edge rusher position in Lorenzo Carter, Matthew Judon, James Smith-Williams. I can go on and on. But at the end of the day, this is where the front office and Terry Fontenot had to put their foot down, put their foot in the ground, should I say. Look at the draft board and look at free agents because if y'all follow my channel, y'all see me do free agent targets, draft prospects, and y'all know that Jamie Sherwood is one of the guys at middle linebacker that I would love to see in an Atlanta Falcons uniform. Former safety turned linebacker and one of the young up-and-coming stars in this league. So coaching has to be on point this year. And defense, like you said, has to be the main point. Now, as far as key free agents, guys like Justin Simmons, who was on a 1-year deal, will they bring him back? Don't know guys like Kevin King, Richie Grant, who's a free agent. So it's just a lot of holes on this defense that they have to fill. And honestly, I really, outside of that, don't feel like they need much. Because offensive side of the ball, the only position that I would question is probably right tackle with Caleb McGarry, but he did play well down the stretch, and he's going to be blocking Michael Penix's blind side, and we know this guy has problem with edge rushes with speed. So that would be the only position I would think on offense that needs fine tuning. Anything else on offense, we have depth, and we have a lot of skill position players that can get the job done.
Beautiful breakdown, Smitty. My one question for you is Kyle Pitts trade ? Do you think it happens?
Ooh. I've been debating on this for probably about a year and a half, but I feel like you got to see what Kyle Pitts has his last season. Yeah, he has a $10.8 million salary cap hit, but at the same time, he's a former first-round pick. He has the measurables. I think he has the ability. I think he's finally going to get a quarterback that's not scared to get him the football. We seen Kirk Cousins did not have trust in Kyle Pitts, and I feel like that hurt the offense just a little bit because if you use him as the focal point of the offense, I feel like it opens up the middle of the field. I feel like Bijan, with what he was doing, I think that makes him even more dangerous. Darnell Mooney is another guy that I feel like could benefit from this. Drake London, we see him get his first 1,000-yard season, double-digit touchdowns. So Kyle Pitts has to be a big part of this offense in 2025 if they keep him. But there are guys in free agency I feel like can come in and give you just as much production. And it's not big name guys like Harrison Bryant, former John Mackey Award winner in college. He hadn't really got the opportunities to flourish and show his skills. But at the same time, playing behind Brock Bowers last year, you're not going to do that. But Kyle Pitts, I think they should keep him for his final season. If he's not where you want him to be by the time trade deadline roll around, then you trade him and see what you can get for him and just go from there.
Beautiful, Smitty. Guys, let us know in the comment section below what you would do if you were the Falcons looking to rebuild the team this offseason. TJ, let's go ahead and let's get into the Saints. I mean, I feel like this is a big one, and I'm going to be really curious to see what you say. And one of the things I want you to touch on here is how do you get out of the biggest question the Saints will have this offseason, and that is the bind of the cap space. Like we mentioned, you can really work around the cap space, but it's going to be really difficult for the Saints to do so because you're projected negative $54 million in cap space to start the offseason. Break it down for me.
I got 3 words for everybody that's concerned about, the New Orleans Saints in 2025. We don't care. Like, I want people to understand this. We don't care. This season is like a phantom season. Like, the Saints are going to the casino and they got the credit of the casino. They gave them $1,000 credit and they just playing the slots because nobody is really looking or checking for the New Orleans Saints to do anything this season. What the Saints need to do is see what they actually have in-house, get rid of some of these older players, get rid of Derek Carr, and basically just go with the flow. Like, I know for a fact that the Saints organization went to Kellen Moore and they said they're not going to judge him based on his first year. Because why would you? I mean, you already said it, Kobe, over $50 million over the cap. This is not going to be an easy fix. So I just think that you need to spend 2025 fixing some of the issues that got you in this situation in the first place. Well, you can't really fix it because we know who got them in a situation in the first place, but we know that he's a made man and his name is Mickey Loomis, the general manager. But you got to focus in on, what you can do in 2026 when the cap situation is much better. But in the meantime, just make sure that you're doing the right things, drafting the right players. What the Saints issue is, they did not have the right coaches to develop these players. You can look around the National Football League and see that the New Orleans Saints know what they're doing when it comes to the draft. Trey Hendrickson led the league in sacks. Zach Bond, first-team All-Pro. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Super Bowl champion. A couple of years ago, he tied the NFL in interceptions. So they know what they're doing. The problem is they don't have the coaching staff to develop. So hopefully Kellen Moore, he comes in, brings a coaching staff that can draft players and also be able to develop them. That's number one. Number two, once again, get rid of Derek Carr. Let him go. I mean, it is what it is at this point. Why would you be keeping him? I mean, the only thing he would do is basically put you out of consideration to actually find his replacement. So you might as well go with Spencer Rattler. I mean, if you go with Spencer Rattler, two things can happen. Spencer Rattler can live up to the potential that a lot of Saints fans feel like he has, and you got your quarterback of the future. Or he can fall flat on his face and you're finding yourself picking in the top 5, which means that you can actually get your true succession plan, maybe like a Arch Manning, a Garrett Nussmeier, one of these young quarterbacks that's going to be coming out in 2026. This is a year where the Saints have to get themselves in order. The Saints' biggest issue also is this family environment that they're creating out here in New Orleans. Like everybody just so buddy. You know, Cam Jordan, like he's so great for the community. DeMario Davis, the Honey Badger, great players, great humanitarians, but we ain't out here, you know, trying to win a Nobel Prize. We're trying to win football games. And these guys are over the hill. And you got to make tough decisions. Football is about making tough decisions. And when you start putting your emotions and letting them play a role, I just feel like you make huge mistakes. The best thing the Saints are going to do is allow Kellen Moore to build up his own coaching staff. They're going to step out of the way and allow him to do that. And I just hope that he makes the right decisions for the New Orleans Saints. And I just hope that Saints fans follow suit. But it's going to start with the draft, man. You got to be able to hit on the draft. I'm not saying you got to be like it was in 2017 where you had Alvin Kamara and Marshawn Lattimore and, you know, and Trey Hendrickson. But you got to be able to hit on some of these players, and you got to go with a sure thing in the first round. You know, I'm looking at Mason Graham. I feel like he will be able to help them. The Saints struggle when it came to stopping a run. I think that he will plug up the hole and be able to help them in a run game. Or you get yourself a pass rusher, you know, a guy that can go out there that can give you that double-digit sacks. You got to be able to get somebody that's going to make an immediate impact, whoever that is. I mean, the Saints, the best thing about it is it's not one of those seasons where you're looking like, well, we need a cornerback. Oh, that cornerback that we wanted is gone. I mean, they got so many holes to fill. So if another team gets that player that you probably felt that was highly touted by your organization, if he's gone, then guess what? Get the best player that's available at another position. So that's what you're going to have to do to fix this situation. But I don't expect for the Saints to be very good in 2025. And I don't think Saints fans are expecting for the Saints to be good in 2025. I think everybody is going into the season understanding that, you know, you take the good with the good, bad with the bad. And if they end up being pretty good, then they would exceed expectations. I don't think anybody would be upset with that. But, I mean, the Saints put themselves in this position, and I just think that people are just wasting their time and getting themselves all worked up and upset about something that they know for a fact that is going to be hard for them to be able to get out of, at least in 2025. So I'm good, whatever the case may be. I think they got a nice, young, smart coach that's going to be able to do some things, but it's going to take some time.
Beautiful breakdown, TJ. Absolutely loved it. Guys, let us know your thoughts in the comment section below about each team in the NFC South. What would your offseason plan be, or your biggest priority be for each of these teams as we enter the offseason? That is going to wrap it up for today's video. Absolutely amazing to be back here. NFC South Roundtable. We are going to be consistent from here on out for the rest of the offseason with some type of content leading up until the 2025 start of the season, where you can expect us to do the exact same thing that we did all of 2024. Another big shout out to BetUS for sponsoring today's video. Guys, again, make sure you check out that Patreon linked in the comment section below. Really, really cool options for you guys to get exclusive content, be able to interact a little bit more, not just with the creators here on the NFC South Roundtable, but the creators just in general all over for Roundtable Sports supports us massively. Make sure on your way out, leave a big like on the video, subscribe to the channel at the NFC South Roundtable so that you get notified every single time that we post and go live. Now that it's the off season, you are not going to want to miss any content that we drop here. But I'm Colby Cochran with Roundtable Sports. We appreciate you for watching, and until next time, stay safe.